Yes, I'm live. Index Reddit. We're going to talk about Venezuela. I'm learning a lot about geopolitics. It's funny how to be America first, you really have to be knowledgeable about the world. So I am pretty much more of an isolationist than most people, but that doesn't mean you can ignore the world, and you still have to have relationships. We see that the relationship we have with Venezuela is that we are now occupying the country. And I'm going back to, I'm going to react to, I think this is the first in recently that Nick has talked about Venezuela. He talked about it twice. This was the first one. This is the one that created some really good conversation because people who are following, and I'm just using Nick as an example, it's not even about Nick. The debate is how much of an imperialist are you? How much are you for America using the might of the military to to accomplish what is needed to be done? Forget about if it's really for another country or anything else. Just fundamentally assuming good intent, assuming the military is going to be used for good intent. Forget about the authorization. These are all different side conversations that make this convoluted. Assuming good intent, when does America proactively invade another country and occupy it? Is that ever on the table for you? There's different ranges of philosophy here. And that Nick represents more imperialism than a lot of people who are in the MAGA camp or obviously libertarian as well. So that's going to be a small, I mean, depends, you can say a large, depends on how much you prioritize it. That could be a little bit of a disagreement. That's okay. Nobody's going to agree on everything. So I went back and I kind of looked because people said, well, and Trump himself said, talking about the oil and what's the history there? I'm like, I don't really know the history. Nick's going to break it down a little bit here, but I kind of went through it. I said, I need this explained to me like I'm a third grader, but like, what's the history? What happened here? And I've talked about it, but I'm going to go on it based on the assumption you don't know anything. I don't know much. So the first step is Venezuela has a lot of oil. And in Venezuela, the government is running it since the 70s. They own it, and companies can go in and get permission to pull it out, basically. You pull it out, refine it, sell it. And I looked for an example. I said, think of it, I think this is a good example. Think of it like a school owning the playground. A kid can run a snack stand there if the principal says yes. The kid does not own the playground. The kid has permission to use it. Decades ago, Venezuela, they nationalized it and took control. That's what that PDVSA stands for, basically the government of Venezuela owning the oil. They opened up more space for foreign companies in the 2000s, but then they pushed to move that out and make major moves in 2007. So they took over projects. So they let the kids on the playground sell the lemonade, and they said, we don't like this, and took over projects when some companies refused to sign up under their new terms. So when the government takes over the project, it becomes a fight over money. The companies, like, we're talking about American companies, are like, I believe Chevron and others, from my research I'm looking at here, says you took what we've got. You owe us compensation. So when people are saying Venezuela owes us money, it's complicated. But you do have to, it'd be like Debo from Friday saying he's saying that you owe him money. Well, it's a problem whether you owe him or not. Unless you've got a Thule or something to balance out the equation, and Venezuela does not, obviously, then If he thinks you owe him money, then that's America. If America thinks you owe American companies money, then you owe them money, because it just comes down to might. And Venezuela's flirting with and has a good relationship with Russia and China. Well, Russia sent them a little something for defense that didn't do anything. So you don't really have a big brother. That's a tough situation. I am not supporting intervention in Venezuela, just to be clear, but we have to tell the story how it's being told here, how it happened. So this is boiling up from years. That's where, from my understanding, people are getting this phrase like they owed us money. It's just very simple. They boil it down for us goys. Us goys are real simple people. We're real simple folk. So they just say Venezuela owes us money, but it's really not that simple. So let me go into Nick Fuentes. And the interesting part of this is, how imperialist are you? That's the first interesting thing for me. Mike Has Bad Knees on a Sunday. Mike Has Bad Knees says Trump pulled his best Somali move, told Venezuela, I'm your president now, literally. Quite literally rolled up in there and said, I'm your president now. And me as an American, I'm like, you're not even running my country how I want it to be run. So why would I support you running their country? We've seen MAGA influencers online posting Venezuelans celebrating. Since when do I give a damn about a Venezuelan? And they posted, they have Venezuelans celebrating. Like, I don't know where the clip's from. I don't know what year the clip's from. They're wrapped in a foreign flag. When I said I'm America first, I really actually meant it. I don't give a damn about the Jamaican flag, the Venezuelan flag, the Palestinian flag, the Israeli flag. MAGA is rallying around people wrapping themselves up in a Venezuelan flag. When do I give a shit about a Venezuelan? When have I ever got on a live stream and cared about what a Venezuelan is going through? What is that supposed to do for me? They're posting this stuff, and I'm just digressing now, but I just want to get that off my chest so I can enjoy the reaction to another excellent Nick Fuentes segment. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it through the whole thing, but we'll make it through as far as I can. But I just have to kind of get that off my chest here, where I'm looking at, and even Alex Jones and people who I thought would be kind of, I don't know, more nuanced in their approach. I'm gonna go to what's the I meme. I used to really like this account. I meme, therefore I am. I used to really like this account. And it just turned into MAGA slop. Breaking, just released video shows Venezuelan dictator Maduro. Just the beginning. Things are gonna get worse for him from here. So, what? Yesterday in Puerto Rico, a Venezuelan mother and her son stepped into a demonstration to defend President Donald Trump's actions and the capture of Maduro.
¿Qué? ¿Qué le pasó? ¿La gente están aquí? ¿Qué pasó? 26 años. 26 años llevamos esperando este momento.
Like, when are we going to care about America? Look, she's not even speaking English. What is going on? Meme, therefore I am. And I don't know who runs the account. I never had beef with this account, but it's just a perfect example of what has MAGA become. That's why the whole Dilly meme team blocked me, because I don't even know what they're doing, but I'm sure they're on this whole thing doing memes on Venezuela getting conquered by the U.S. to be occupied, like Afghanistan. Meme, therefore I am. MAGA Goy Slop says, at this point, I'm convinced that if Maduro ran for U.S. president, the left would support him just out of spite. What kind of take is that? Elon Musk slop. He's offering Starlink free to Venezuela. So what? What does that have to do with me? Why doesn't he offer Starlink free for people in the inner city here or something? I don't. That would be a story for me. I don't care if he's offering internet free to Venezuelans. What does a Venezuelan need internet for? as my life continues today. I'm not concerned about a Venezuelan having access to Twitter or whatever. I can no longer watch leftist TikTok videos without cursing and wanting to reach through the screen. What is this one?
Wrong. How can you suppose Americans believe ourselves to be the good guy? And Trump has turned us into the villain.
Yeah, I actually don't have any stomach for that either. A large crowd of Venezuelans gathered for a glimpse of dictator Maduro as he's walked into the Metropolitan Detention Center in Brooklyn. Why am I watching people in another country? It's like, it's the Somalis one day, then it's the Israelis the other day, then it's the Mexicans the next day, then it's the Haitians eating cats the next day, then it's Venezuelans celebrating the Department of War jumping into their country and occupying it. And then it's the Jeets the next day. I mean, this is getting tired. I'm tired, boss. I'm tired. Well, let me get to Nicholas J. Fuentes.
It's sort of a difficult issue for me, and I'll tell you why. I talked a little bit about this the last time we covered Venezuela. There is a big difference between what we would say being a non-interventionist, an isolationist, being anti-war, and opposing the wars that we have been in for the past 25 years. And what do I mean by that? We went to war in Iraq under a false pretense, and that has defined our political order for 20 years. It was a unilateral war against the Security Council, very hypocritical in a sense if we're trying to promote these international institutions and security cooperation and these things. It's this unilateral war. We're abusing the pretext, which is against WMDs, which they didn't even have. Of course, the driving power behind that war was the Israel lobby. And the war goes on for 20 years because of mission creep, because the Israelis wanted us there, because there was this idea that maybe...
Keep in mind, this is 2 months at least ago. This is before U.S. came in and captured Maduro. Nick's making it clear he's not for these regime changes where we occupy the country. Now, you can make the case that, well, that would be every regime change unless you literally have your puppet set so you can do the Indiana Jones swap, but that's a different topic. Nick has made it clear he is not for occupying countries. That's not what he's looking for.
We would be launching invasions against other countries like Syria or Iran. And it became this never-ending counterinsurgency, the purpose of which we didn't even know what it was anymore. Democracy promotion, defending Israel's interests, undermining other countries in the region. And so there's very good reasons to oppose that war. Or, similarly, the never-ending war in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan, it started out that we were there to undermine the Taliban and hunt down Osama bin Laden. And within 10 years, without even missing a beat, without skipping a beat, they said, now it's about women voting in elections in Afghanistan. Okay.
So you can already see where Nick is going to me, and we'll play it here. But I'd like to stop it and see. You see where he's going. You can see he's leading up to, he's not against the wars. He's against the wars if they are for some other nefarious purpose. That's where he's drawing the line here. And Mike Has Bad Knee says, by pure definition, it was a move that could be considered America First in that it's a reintroduction of the Monroe doctrine. The Monroe Doctrine, Nick actually agrees with that, to my knowledge. My knowledge, my understanding is that he does support it. Let's continue on.
So very similar there, as well as all the other interventions. And there's a variety of reasons that you might be against the global war on terror, the war in Afghanistan, the war in Iraq. That is altogether different. Not completely different, but it is independent from being ideologically against war in itself, being ideologically against interventions in general, or being an isolationist, which is being against hostile interventions, but also against international cooperation. And I have always said on my show, my foreign policy view is that we should be America first, not isolationist, not even non-interventionist, and I'm not anti-war. I believe that intervention, and sometimes up to and including war, is a necessary tool. I don't think that that should be the first resort, and I don't think that we should overextend ourselves and our commitments to allies or our efforts to undermine adversaries, but I do believe that interventions are actually frequently necessary, and I think that sometimes war becomes necessary. I think that it's better, it's preferable to use economic tools and use our international institutions as a forum to mediate disputes and decrease the risk of miscalculations or unnecessary conflicts, things of that nature. But I'm not like a libertarian. I'm not a libertarian that says I hate war. I don't believe we should intervene overseas. There's something in principle wrong with these things. And the reason being is because we are the most powerful nation in the world. We have the biggest Navy. We have the biggest Air Force. We have the biggest, most powerful economy and military. And we should use the military to benefit Americans. We should use the military not to change the way the world is, not to police the world, but we should use the military to secure benefits, tangible benefits for Americans. And what would those things be? Resources. We should secure access to resources that we cannot get or that make us richer, and we should secure the supply chains that deliver them. The other reason we should use the military is for, of course, defending the homeland. And to me, that comes in two distinct forms, which is our immediate periphery.
Okay, so this is where is the strong disagreement here? I have a subtle disagreement with Nick in that the only disagreement I agree with everything Nick said here, except I am 100% in every case against proactive military use in order to acquire the resources. I think if you are in dire straits, I mean, that's a whole different kind of discussion. I'm still against it, but I am against proactively bombing, using military force, guns, weapons, violence to secure resources. I think pulling all the other levers to do so before that are all legitimate. Sanctions is one of the tough ones because I've never liked sanctions, because when you put sanctions on a country, you basically are trying to starve the people out, honestly. Basically, you're trying to, like, for example, we put sanctions on Venezuela. So what happens is basically through the supply chain, it makes it more difficult for Venezuelans to get food, imports that they might need. Now, I don't think, even with sanctions, I don't think the people should be starving. I mean, that is in part because of a corrupt government, because they have enough resources in Venezuela where the people don't need to starve, but it does lend itself towards that, and the people at the top skim everything off the top, and the people at the bottom don't get much, and then the idea is the people at the bottom push for revolt, and that's kind of what you're seeing in Venezuela. We don't like what you do. We put sanctions on you, meaning we make it hard for other countries to do business with you is basically what it comes down to. We make it hard for them to buy your oil, and then in return, you're not exporting out. You don't get the imports in. Maybe some of that is food for your people, food and resources for your people, and then your people get angry and they don't like you as the leader anymore. I would much rather prefer that than violence. But even that's a little shady, because when you look at the banking system and all that, the elephant in the room are the tiny hats. They're running all that, but we got to take that off the table right now just to talk about principle. Let's just take the tiny hats off the table. Who's really in charge of the banking and all that? Because that's where the sanctions come from. These pressures come from. You could argue sanctions are just a slow roll of military action. And at times, to my knowledge, I don't think any civilians were killed in this recent attack. You could argue sanctions break down your common poor people in the country more than targeted military action even does, because that targets people in the military. So none of this is clean, and then none of this is cut and dry easy. I would like sanctions to be a last resort. As of right now, I'm still learning and reading. I would say sanctions are still more preferable than military action. Let's continue on with Nicholas J. Fuentes.
Which is the Western Hemisphere, the Caribbean, the North and South border, but also the proliferation of nuclear weapons, because if there's a nuclear war, that's not good for anybody. So this is kind of generally where I'm at. And I say that to preface because this is why it's difficult when you approach the Venezuela conversation, because for 10 years, I have been opposed and vocally and adamantly opposed to our interventions in the Middle East. Regime change in Iran, regime change in Syria, the war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan. I'm opposed to all that. And you start to sound like you're a libertarian, or you start to sound like you're a non-interventionist, when really I'm not. And when it comes to Venezuela, I see in this case, for me, it's a little more complicated, because this is a legitimate interest of the United States. This is in our hemisphere. The entire geostrategic posture of the United States is based on the fact, or it's based on the geographic reality, that the United States is protected by natural barriers. We don't have to have the same anxieties. We don't think the same way as other countries, because we don't share a border with other powerful nations, like, let's say, Russia or Germany or India or Iran. We're protected by two oceans, and there are no other countries in the North and South American continents that threaten us. And so, in order for us to remain safe, we don't really need to worry as much about what is happening on the Eurasian African continent.
You see how, I'm going to get to this comment here by Roadrunner. It's a great comment. It's a great point of discussion. You see how nuanced Nick Fuentes is. If anybody is presenting you, whether you like him or not, that's irrelevant. I'm talking about how nuanced the take is. When you see stuff in reaction to him, it's all very big picture, no nuanced. He is selling out to the tiny hats, or he is cheering on Trump with Venezuela. That's not the take. It's very, very well thought out, very knowledge-based, and very nuanced. That's why I ask people, have you watched the show? That's the show. It's nuanced political takes. It's a great point of discussion. When does that happen? Everyone has, I don't care how libertarian you are, you have to have a point where you look at it, is this action worth it or not? Whether sanctions or whatever else. And that takes us to Roadrunner says, after being in the Marine Corps and seeing what I've seen, well, thank you for your service, first of all, trying to be diplomatic with other countries that hate you won't work. They'll whittle you down with a machete before having a conversation. It's a fair, legitimate point. I think there's reasons why these countries hate us that are outside of, I have no beef with the Venezuelan. So when I said I don't care about Venezuelan, that's not to hope any harm on anybody. I just don't, literally, I'm apathetic. I'm not rooting for their demise. I don't hate them. There's no country that I hate. I mean, China, Russia. Why would I hate a Chinese person? For what reason? And if Christians don't hate anybody, let's keep reminding that. But they do, I know what you mean generally, they just don't like America. And there's reasons for that. And it has nothing to do with you, Roadrunner, or me. directly, but we are responsible for, and I don't hate Israelis. But we are ultimately responsible for what our government is doing. But I like the Chinese plan. Let me be clear, I am an imperialist. So I agree with Nick Fuentes saying, this is our hemisphere. We've got to secure it for our base, for our people. The only debate is, how do you do that? I would like to do that through relationships, just like a neighbor. Like this is our neighborhood, right? So let's keep it clean. I don't need to have beef with you. Obviously beef pops up or whatever sometimes, but I've never had beef with a neighbor. That doesn't, and there's reasons that you could have, or I could have, whether it's fireworks or dogs barking at 2 a.m. or whatever stupid stuff. I'd rather be like, hey, neighbor, when we see each other, we're good. And that is what geopolitics is. So if those countries hate us, then I need the people who are representing us, Roadrunner, to be fired. Because I don't hate them. Why do those countries hate us? It's unacceptable. Shouldn't be happening. Why? Why does Venezuela, well, they don't, I don't think they necessarily hate us, but you can pick a country. What country would it be? I don't even know off the top of my head. Middle Eastern country. Why do they hate us? Well, maybe because we drop 2,000-pound bombs on the head of their little children all the time on behalf of Israel. There's a reason why the people hate us. And we've got to take control of our leaders, like Donald Trump, and say, whoa, I'm not confident. First of all, don't give me any excuse that this is about narcotics. If this is about imperialism, then let's be Americans and be like, this is about American imperialism. Let's do this. And they had a little bit of that because they say, well, what Trump promised he'll do. But fundamentally, they're still saying it's about narcotics. Don't do that then. Don't do that then. If it's about American imperialism, then stand up like an imperialist and say it's about the oil. You're selling oil to Russia. Why would we want that to happen? Stop doing that. At least, and then we can have a discussion. But no, they feed us these little, we're like chickens in a coop and they keep feeding us chicken feed. That's the goy feed. Oh, it's narcotic, it's drug narcotics. And they warm us up with using expensive bombs to blow up boats with video that I don't know where it's from, when it was taken, who was on the boat. Then they slowly warmed us up into this, and now you got the maggots cheering it on. And I'm like, what's happening? What are you cheering exactly? And I find it odd that every single Zionist Jew is cheering this on. And why is it always, everything is the Jew. Maduro himself is a Jew. So you have Jew, it's like you can't escape it, man. It's just crazy. But does that make sense, Roadrunner? I need you, why are you a diplomat? Why? I don't hate the country. Why do they hate me? I need you to figure that out. That's your job. You, the ambassador or whatever, you diplomat, that's literally your job. If I don't hate the country, why do they hate me? Completely unnecessary.
That's not an immediate threat or concern because we're protected from that by the oceans. What we do have to worry about is our island. We do have to worry about is the Caribbean. We have to worry about Central America and South America because that is what is close. That is what has a land bridge to the United States. That is in our immediate periphery. And that's why we have the Monroe Doctrine, which says that for America to be safe, it is our legitimate sphere of influence. It is our legitimate jurisdiction to govern the Americas. And we don't necessarily need to intervene in the balance of power in Europe or in Asia or in the Middle East. And there's not too much happening in Africa. But what we do need is to control our backyard.
So tell me where you disagree with that. Don't have to take it to war. Nick does say that's he said last resort. But let's just stop there where he says, so what's wrong with the doctrine of saying we focus on our hemisphere first and foremost? I'm perfectly fine with that. That kind of means, what are we doing in Russia and Ukraine? Why don't we focus on our area first? I would like to use sweetened deals and things like that to make it more attractive for a country like Venezuela to not mess with Russia and all that stuff. I don't care if it's a dictator. That's not my country. I know that's not for me. I'm not a spread democracy. I don't even like democracy anymore. I mean, I don't prefer it over any other. So that doesn't do anything for me. So there's no reason for me to push Venezuela to Russia or China, to BRICS. That's really what this is about, and I have to do more reading to articulate that. But it is about the petrodollar. It's about Venezuela going to the yuan and trading in those dollars, or looking at BRICS. That's what the whole thing with what's his name? Milei. I don't know why his name escaped me for a second. Javier Milei in Argentina. That's why they wanted him in charge, because Argentina could have gone to BRICS. It's all the same thing that we see all over the place. And you can make an argument, because that's to protect the currency that we use. So you can make an argument that, yeah, we don't want them to go to BRICS, but when Trump is talking to us, that's not what he's saying. So let's talk about it. Let's go through Congress on it, especially if you're going to go through war, that last resort. That's got to go through Congress. You can't say narcotics and just go up in there. That makes no sense. You could just do that. You could do that with any country. There's no drug dealers coming out of America. You can have another country come up in here and say, you got drug dealers coming out of this country. You could do it to Mexico. You could do it to Colombia, any of these countries, pretty much.
That is the traditional American point of view. And when it comes to Venezuela, you have a socialist regime which is aligned against the United States, ideologically aligned against the United States ever since the Bolivarian Revolution. And what's more, Venezuela is aligned with our strategic competitors, Russia and China. So for me, this is a legitimate national security concern and a strategic concern for the United States in a way that Iran or Hamas or Hezbollah or Libya or Syria or Ukraine, even for that matter, is not, because it's right there and it's in our legitimate sphere of influence. It's on our island. You know, rightfully, if you're thinking of these things in the right way, North and South America are basically like a giant island. So it's part of us. And so that's why I'm a little bit more in favor of intervention in Venezuela than in other countries. With that being said, I don't necessarily support any kind of intervention or any kind of way to go about this. And this kind of brings us to the current conversation. The Trump administration has been effectively at war with Venezuela for 5 or 6 years. And by that, I mean, if you recall, in Trump's first term, he brought in John Bolton as his national security advisor. And under the John Bolton Trump administration, we instituted a maximum pressure campaign against the Maduro regime in Venezuela. And we were effectively trying to force regime change. You might remember the name of the opposition leader, Juan Guaido. We tried to make him the president. We ratcheted up the sanctions, enforced the sanctions on their oil. And you might recall during those years, this is when Venezuela experienced a currency crisis, hyperinflation, massive protests, mass starvation. This was by design. You might remember that because this was under the Trump administration policy of basically trying to strangle Venezuela such that it would collapse from within. And a U.S.-backed opposition leader would come to power and they would realign Caracas to Washington away from China and Russia. That was a Bolton, Pompeo, Trump policy. And what actually happened...
So MAGA it's just a weird alliance. Not that I'm going to disagree with Pompeo and Bolton on everything, but now you see how it's all, that was his first term. You see how it's all come together where it's MAGA neocons. It's the maggot movement. They've all come together. Pompeo, Rubio, Bolton. And then they pretend like Bolton is some lunatic. Oh, why? Because he went against Trump. Not fundamentally. Fundamentally, they agree with Bolton on everything. Bombing Iran, all of it. I don't know what MAGA disagrees with John Bolton on, other than don't disrespect Trump.
happened. Here was the beautiful part. Because we tried to strangle this country with sanctions, their country runs on revenue from oil, and we went after their oil. As a consequence, their currency collapsed. The people started to starve. There was tremendous political disorder in Venezuela. And what typically happens when you see something like that is a exodus of refugees. Yep. So why do you think there were 10 million illegal immigrants under the Biden administration? Well, one, among many reasons, is that we tried to collapse Venezuela and millions of people left the country. Millions of criminals and drug smugglers and ordinary people too fled Venezuela into the United States because we destabilized their nation. And that's how they wound up in Chicago and Houston, Texas.
Yeah, one of the ones that did the horrific crime against Laken Riley, I believe, was a Venezuelan.
New York and LA, causing all kinds of problems. And they're not great immigrants either.
No.
On average, they have a very low IQ in Venezuela.
No, they're not people you would want here. They don't match culture-wise. It's very similar to the Somalis.
High Indio admixture. There's a lot of organized crime in Venezuela. They're kidnappers, drug smugglers. Like, these are not great people. And so the consequences of our extremely aggressive backdoor regime change, maximum pressure policy was the refugee crisis, which has metastasized into this illegal immigrant occupation, which we're now trying to reverse. We gave those people temporary protected status. So now Trump is back in power, and he has effectively resumed the same policy.
Yeah, I don't like that. If you're going to support sanctions, then support what you've put forward. Meaning, they got to stay. Well, they can't the hell come here. So what happens is we put the sanctions on them, so they flee, and then we let them here. We give them protected status. Well, what's the point of the sanctions then? I thought the sanctions were to starve them out. Own it. If that's what you stand on it. Nope. Close your door. Basically, you're not allowing your neighbor to get food in their house, so they got to leave the house and look for food. They come knocking on your door, America's door. We open the door because we're doing our lives and don't care. Oh, who wants to talk about politics and oh yeah, we want to be good-hearted. Come on in. And they come on in, and literally some of them just literally rape and violate people. Have no business being here. Jose Ibarra is a Venezuelan man, because I did a little series on the Laken Riley thing. First entered the United States in early September 2022. I don't know if it was directly because of sanctions or anything like that, but he came from Venezuela. Violated Laken Riley. Yeah, we all have to own. It's not just Biden. It's not just Biden. It is this whole MAGA, Democrat, GOP merger of ideas, and us allowing that to happen.
I'm sure you've seen, it's been reported all over, that the United States is building up its force posture off the coast of Venezuela, deploying U.S. Navy destroyers, submarines, Air Force assets, reconnaissance in the islands surrounding Venezuela, on the coast of Venezuela. And we've been bombing what the administration is claiming are small drug smuggling vessels manned by crews of 5 to 12 people. I think there's been at least 3 high-profile instances where these boats have been destroyed and the crew murdered by the United States. And as this campaign goes on of both maximum pressure and military escalation, it seems now that both the United States and Venezuela are anticipating an imminent regime change war. In recent days, Venezuela is putting shipping containers and heavy machinery blocking major access roads into Venezuela. They're taking control over air defense at their airports. And the United States has been signaling that they might begin operations on Venezuelan soil, meaning that they will be launching airstrikes or missile strikes from naval vessels against what they say are...
Obviously, we now know that there was an operation that's cost us billions of dollars that was planned for. And it's going to cost another billions more just to occupy. Every day we occupy them, the millions. That's where some of the money really is for some of these contractors and how they get broken off. They want to occupy.
Drug smuggling operations inside Venezuela on their actual territory. And everybody can see where this is headed. And where this is headed is a decapitation. Earlier this year, the Trump administration put a $50 million bounty on the head of Nicolás Maduro, which incentivizes traitors inside of his government. If they want to sell out, they anticipate the regime is crumbling, they can collaborate with the United States and get Maduro assassinated.
And just like I've just finished watching Homeland, they had a CIA, if you don't know Homeland, the TV show, it's basically about the CIA, one of my favorite shows of all time. I've watched it through multiple times now. They're very similar to how they portray it in the show. The show, that they do such a great job of discussing politics indirectly in the show. The U.S. government, CIA, had an operative close to Maduro. They knew where he was at all times.
Him arrested, capture him, overthrow his government, something like that. So we're revisiting this maximum pressure campaign on Venezuela. Now, it's in this context, on the cusp of another war, that there's some reporting from the New York Times, and this is disputed, but there is a piece out in the New York Times today which says that the Maduro regime in Venezuela actually offered the United States a deal. So why are we doing all of this? It is because the Venezuelan regime is socialist. They're ideologically third worldist, socialist. They're against Washington. They're against the West. They're aligned with China, Russia, and Iran. They get Russian defense equipment. They have Chinese investment.
Wait, but just because somebody's socialist, I know the ideology is different than the West, but does that mean they need to be against the West, though? Like socialism, a part of socialism isn't I'm anti-West. That's a separate. Now you can understand maybe a lot of socialists are against the way the West operates, capitalism, or however free markets, however you want to discuss it. But that doesn't mean just because I'm socialist, I'm against the West. That's a different thing.
They collaborate with the Iranian military. This is all very worrying for the United States. And this is why we want to overthrow that regime, and we want Venezuela to buy American military equipment.
So I looked at this and I asked ChatGPT to break down for me why we are against. Let's listen to it real quick. I'm gonna do a digression here. How did we push Venezuela away from the U.S.?
Venezuela did not flip from friendly with America to friendly with Russia and China overnight. It happened because of a long chain of fights over power, oil rules, and money, and because Russia and China offered Venezuela things the United States increasingly refused to offer. Council on Foreign Relations, Venezuela and the United States used to be tightly linked through oil. U.S. refineries bought a lot of Venezuelan crude, and Venezuela liked having a big, nearby customer that paid in dollars. U.S. government reporting describes the United States as a preferred export destination for Venezuelan oil for a long time. Congress.gov. Then Hugo Chavez came to power and changed the relationship on purpose. He built his politics around Venezuela runs itself, and the U.S. does not get to boss us around, and he publicly picked fights with U.S. leaders. He also traveled and strengthened ties with countries the U.S. was competing with, including China and Russia. Council on Foreign Relations. A major trust break happened in 2002 when there was a coup attempt that briefly removed Chavez. Chavez and his supporters accused the United States of supporting the coup. The U.S. government denied involvement. Even with the denial, the event fed a long-term suspicion in Caracas that Washington wanted regime change. Al Jazeera oil contracts became the next big fracture. Chavez's government changed terms on oil projects and expanded state control. Some foreign companies stopped operating and sued, saying the contract changes were illegal under their agreements. A U.S. Congressional Research Service report describes how Chavez-era policies modified contracts, and it notes that companies including Exxon and Conoco filed lawsuits for contractual violations. Congress.gov. Now add the money problem. When Venezuela needed huge amounts of cash, China stepped in with big loans that were often backed by oil shipments. A common structure was oil for loans, where Venezuela received financing and promised future oil deliveries or oil revenue streams as repayment. Multiple sources describe this pattern and scale, including reporting that Chinese financing to Venezuela exceeded $60 billion from 2007 to 2017, and research describing China's oil for loan strategy. America's Quarterly, here is the third-grade version of that financing.
So what? You see, there's still gaps here. That's why I have to look, and I don't know if there's any good books on this topic. I'm sure there are. When they needed huge amounts of cash, So what I'm going to ask it in the background here is, why didn't the U.S. do this? So you see the problem I'm having here is so it looks like Hugo Chavez is the real reason. And I think, it's funny, when they did the invasion of Venezuela, the other day, was that 2 days ago? Or was it? Yeah. It was early morning, I think, yesterday. They bombed his gravesite, I believe. So they're almost like doing meme type stuff in real life. How is Venezuela so unguarded and undefended? That's a whole nother side project to look at. How could your country be that? If your country is that defenseless, then I'm sorry, man. It is what it is. If somebody who's bigger, badder, if a UFC fighter comes up to me, I got nowhere to go, nowhere to run, and they say I owe them $100, then I owe them $100. It doesn't matter if I've never seen that nigga in my life. That's the end of that's just the way it is. That's why you see countries getting nukes. That's why, if you got the nukes, this a whole different relationship. It's the 2A of countries. It's a good question here. Will they come to America after the bombing? I don't know the answer to that off the top of my head. I don't know if that, I honestly don't know. I think I put that question in here, actually. Do we still have protective status on some Venezuelans? Let's listen to that while it's looking up.
As of Sunday, January 4th, 2026, the United States does not have an active temporary protected status umbrella that is still protecting Venezuelans as a group. The key legal move was the Supreme Court order dated October 3rd, 2025, which let DHS's termination actions take effect while the case continues in the courts. Supreme Court. After that, reporting and legal summaries describe the Venezuela 2021 TPS group as ending on November 7, 2025, which is already in the past relative to today. Littler Mendelsohn, PC. So what protection exists for some Venezuelans right now? It exists on an individual basis through things like asylum, withholding of removal, parole that has not been terminated, or another immigration status. Those are personal case outcomes, not a blanket label that covers Venezuelans as a category. WLRN, now the second part, whether more Venezuelans will come after the reported U.S. capture of Maduro. You are going to see two forces pulling in opposite directions, and the news already shows both. A short-term surge out of Venezuela into nearby countries is plausible if people expect violence, reprisals, or a power vacuum. Colombia publicly prepared for a potential large refugee inflow, and analysts in the region discuss short-term population movement driven by instability. Al Jazeera return movement is also plausible because many people left Venezuela for political and economic reasons, and some diaspora communities are reacting with hope that they can go home. Reuters and AP both describe celebration and talk of returning, mixed with uncertainty about what comes next. Reuters. For arrivals to the United States specifically, U.S. policy. The U.S.
I think Nick Fuentes tweeted today about something to the effect of they can go home now, which is a great point. So if they were here for some protected status or something like that, then they can go home now, right? We're in control of Venezuela. What's the concern? Oh, wow. Matt Walsh. I just saw this. I'm digressing, then I'll go back to, and then I'll be out. I only got about 5 more minutes here. Matt Walsh tweets, I just saw this today as of an hour ago. This is a war for oil. That's my whole live stream, basically. So Matt Walsh is going against everything I just said? What is good? I haven't even read it yet. Whoa. First of all, the war lasted like 90 minutes. I just got to control myself so I don't cuss every 2 seconds. Bitch, we didn't call it a 90-day war. War is war. We had weapons in another country, weapons free, capturing their active president. I don't care if he cheated in the election or not. That ain't got shit to do with me. He was their active, whoever has the power to sit on the throne is the president. Are you saying it wasn't a war? What is this? What is a war then? I don't even understand what a war means. Second, going to war to secure vital resources for your own people is totally legitimate. But that's not what they're saying. No, they're talking about the oil now, so I have to look at their comments. But leading up to this and everything was about drug trade. They're bringing up in drug charges. Mike has bad knees. I didn't even know this. Said they had gun charges on them in the Southern District of New York. What is that? Is it about resources or is it not? I'm confused. I have to go by what you say. Otherwise, then let's talk about the Epstein files. You say the Epstein files are a hoax. Probably not then. It's probably national security to make sure that we have resources, right? So if you can do that with this, then I can do that with that. And even if you want to talk about the national resources conversation, that's what this whole live has been about. It's complicated. Horrific take by Matt Walsh there. You see how Nick is so much better, so much more nuanced. Why should we allow some third world communist shithole to control trillions of dollars of oil? That's a flat out neocon take. It just flat out. Wow. I wanted to go to Nick's timeline because I think Nick had a great point. You see how much better Nick is on this because he has a philosophy. America First philosophy. Let's take a look at this. He said something about, here it is. Now that Venezuela has been liberated, we must send every single Venezuelan illegal refugee and criminal back home. And then Nick's like, well, we already did that. Take the oil. I would agree with that since we've already done it. I don't support what we did, but yeah, since we already, yeah, you got to take the oil. Remigrate the foreigners. That should be a part of this conversation. Absolutely. Why? Absolutely. No asylum, all of them. Go. Your home's ready for you. Go back home. That's a big part of that's a great take. Look at the difference between Matt Walsh and Nick Fuentes. That's why they don't want you to listen to Nick Fuentes. Is he a plant? Is he a Fed? How the hell would I don't know. I thought I liked Tucker Carlson a minute ago, and now I don't like him as much. Let me play this answer here, and then I'm out. Why didn't the U.S. do what China did in breaking off Venezuela to get into their good graces? Wait, what? Oh, shoot. No, that's the wrong one. I said the wrong thing. Why didn't the U.S. break off Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, like China did with the $90 billion for oil? Why wasn't that a U.S. strategy to get him in our good favors as well? So we'll see if I have time for that. And I'll look at the comments real quick while we're doing that. Christian, what's up? You're able to stop by on a prop-up live? Sounds like he agrees with Nick. Matt Walsh. Yeah, there's some agreement there, but well, he's not talking about the immigration issue. And the angle that Matt Walsh is taking is it's not about the oil. I don't even understand the position that he's taking. And then on top of that, well, then why are we supporting the president? So it's not about drugs then, right? It's not about the drug boats then. We admit that, right? So I need to flesh that out. So I'm happy to, well, I don't agree with Matt Walsh because I don't agree with the bombs flying for it. Nick Fuentes says he doesn't agree with it because it coming with it is us occupying them for an indefinite period of time. He never liked that, never wanted that. So he said, basically, I think, I don't want to speak for Nick, but it sounds like if you could swap it in for the America-friendly guy and just be out, then Nick would have been fine with it. So I need more nuance from Matt Walsh. Venezuela resisted the condition, so maybe we did offer them. The U.S., let's see here. U.S. government closed financing channels early due to credit risk in politics. Okay, there it is. It's bullshit. There's no reason. China poured a huge amount of state money into Venezuela and tied to repayment to oil shipments. U.S. U.S. government does not have China's kind of state banking machine. That's bullshit. That can push tens of billions out the door. Absolute bullshit. What do you mean we don't have that? China's big moves ran through policy banks like China. See, we spend money for military, war, giving Israel, all that, other countries, bombing. China spends money buying people off in relationships. Which money's better spent? That's what it came down to. I appreciate everybody. I'm out.